When the train finally slowed down and they announced the stop in Sochi, I felt my heart beat faster. My husband and I had been dreaming about this trip for months. We counted the days until we finally saw our new apartment, bought with almost our last savings. The bags were heavy, but the joy was so overwhelming that I didn't even notice the fatigue. I imagined how we would open the door, inhale the smell of fresh renovation and feel that this was our corner by the sea, our quiet haven where we could escape from all our worries. My husband and I looked at each other and smiled. Something special was waiting for us ahead. The taxi quickly sped us to the new building, and while the driver unloaded our suitcases, I eagerly examined the facade of the house. White walls, mirrored balconies, a well-kept area with flower beds and benches. Everything looked exactly as we dreamed. Inside, I felt the delight of a child who has come to the sea for the first time. As I rode the elevator up, I mentally replayed every detail of my future life. Breakfasts on the balcony with a view of the sunrise, the sound of the waves at night, the smiles of friends we would invite to visit. But as soon as the elevator doors opened, my heart betrayed me. In the hallway on our floor stood a pair of shoes that I recognized instantly. Old, worn, with a crooked heel, my mother-in-law's shoes. I froze in place, and a thought flashed through my head, it can't be. But my husband's steps, confident and quick, brought me out of my stupor. We approached the door, and in the keyhole there was a key. Our key, or rather a duplicate, which we had once naively left with our mother-in-law just in case. My husband, frowning, pushed the door, and it obediently gave in. The first thing I saw was my mother-in-law sitting in our armchair with a cup of coffee in her hands. She looked as if she had always lived here. She had made herself comfortable, put a vase of flowers next to her, and arranged some of her trinkets on the shelves. Her blanket was lying on the sofa, a kettle was noisy in the kitchen, and her bag was peeking out of the bedroom. She looked up at us and smiled, as if she had met long-awaited guests. And not the owners of the apartment. "Well, here you are," she said joyfully, as if this was a surprise that we should evaluate. "I knew you would come today. I decided to meet you and make it cozy while you were away." I stood there, amazed by the impudence, feeling the joy of buying an apartment instantly evaporate. My husband squeezed my hand so tightly that I realized he was furious too. But there was such satisfaction in my mother-in-law's eyes that it became clear that she was not going to behave like a guest at all. She felt like the hostess. We walked to the entrance, and I still could not believe that this was really ours. A new house in Sochi. Fresh whitewash on the facade. Neat flower beds at the entrance, palm trees planted along the paths, and the air was warm, salty, with a slight taste of the sea. It seemed to me that I had ended up in some other world, where everything was calmer and happier. My husband smiled, holding the keys in his hand, and joked that now we would cross the threshold and officially begin a new life. I dreamed of how we would be drinking morning coffee on the balcony, listening to the cries of seagulls and having dinners with friends, and in the evening going out to the embankment, walking together. We went up to our floor. I felt a slight excitement. My heart was pounding as if I was reliving my first meeting with my husband. But as soon as we opened the door, my dream was shaken. In the hallway there were suitcases, neatly folded piles of things, and she, his mother. My mother-in-law was standing in the center of the living room, looking as if she had always lived here. She was wearing a housecoat, her slippers were already standing by the sofa, and the smell of freshly cooked soup was spreading through the kitchen. She turned to us and said, "Well, we're finally here. I thought you would be late." At first I couldn't believe my eyes. I expected an empty apartment, new, fresh, smelling of paint and the sea. But instead I saw that it was already inhabited, and not by us. My husband froze next to me, clutching the keys in his hand so tightly that his knuckles turned white. I felt everything inside me turn over. Instead of joy, bewilderment; instead of delight, anxiety. I took a step forward and asked, "Mom, what are you doing here?" Trying to speak calmly, but my voice still trembled. She smiled as confidently as if it were her home, and answered, "Well, what do you mean?" I live here. Where else would I be? When the door to the apartment finally opened, we expected to see empty rooms smelling of fresh paint and new walls. But instead, we were greeted by a familiar figure, my mother-in-law. She was standing in the middle of the living room, like the hostess, with her hands on her hips and looking at us with an expression as if it was she who had invited us here. Her suitcases and unpacked boxes were on the floor, and her things were hanging neatly laid out on the sofa. The air was filled with the smell of fried potatoes, and I was amazed to notice a plate with an unfinished dinner on the kitchen table. "Well, finally," she exclaimed, as if we were late to meet you. "I already thought you would be getting here in a month. And I have already settled in, arranged everything. Look how cozy it has become." I froze on the threshold, not believing my eyes. The apartment we dreamed of, where we were going to come together for the first time, turned out to be already occupied. The husband frowned, stepped forward and tried to say something in a firm voice. But his mother-in-law did not let him get a word in. "You are busy with work, with the children and everything else," she continued, "and the apartment would have been empty. So I decided, why let it go to waste, so I came early." She said this so casually, as if she was talking not about our personal space, but about some dacha where everyone could live in turns. I felt anger boiling inside me, but I was even more perplexed. How did she even manage to get here? Remembering that when she was filling out the documents she saw a spare key on my husband, I understood everything and became completely bitter. "Mom," my husband's voice sounded muffled. "This is our apartment. We wanted to furnish it ourselves and live here. You can't just go and move in without asking." She just waved her hand, as if his words were whims. "Oh, don't start. I'm a mother, I have rights too." "Yes, and you don't feel sorry, do you?" I stood silently, feeling my heart beating in my temples. Our first evening in the long-awaited apartment turned into a nightmarish discovery. And all because my mother-in-law decided to declare someone else's home her home. Scene 4. We were left alone in the apartment. The sun was setting, and golden rays softly flooded the rooms. There was silence in the air, broken only by the muffled noise of the sea. Outside the windows, my husband and I sat on the floor, leaning on the still unpacked boxes, and were silent. There were too many words to utter, and at the same time, none of them seemed necessary. I felt bitterness, resentment, and relief mixed inside me. Yes, my mother-in-law had ruined our first day in our house, but now that she was gone, a space of freedom opened up before us that belonged only to us. We began to open the boxes. Things habitually fell on the shelf, photographs were put in frames. Books took their place. Every movement, every object seemed to confirm. This is truly our home, our fortress. My husband suddenly extended his hand to me. There was regret and determination in his eyes. I should have told her, no, even earlier. "I'm sorry you had to listen to all this." I gently squeezed his palm and answered, "The main thing is that now everything is clear. This is our home, and only our rules will apply here." With these words, we approached the balcony. The endless expanse of sea opened up before our eyes, turning pink in the rays of the sunset. The city was starting to light up, and from above, our new home looked like part of a large living world. I took a deep breath of the salty air and felt calm. It was a symbol of a new chapter that had begun for both of us. Children's voices could be heard below, music was playing somewhere, life was flowing, and we were a part of it. We hugged and remained standing in silence until the last rays of the sun disappeared behind the horizon. Yes, there would still be difficulties ahead, and perhaps my mother-in-law would try to interfere again. But now I knew we could handle it. We had a home, we had love, we had unity. And everything else ceased to matter.